The NBA playoffs are set. And the NBA has always been about 2 seasons. The regular season, stars miss games. It's not as physical. Then you get to the playoffs where it's significantly more physically demanding. You don't play all the dogs in the league. So right now the Lakers are on fire against bad teams. LeBron's healthy, AD's healthy, and they've made their way to the play-in game, and they will beat the T-Wolves in the play-in game. That team's falling apart. And you want to believe, when you look at the Lakers, you want to believe it's magical. But history tells you they cannot win a playoff game in 4 long series. AD will get hurt. LeBron's in year 20. It's like traveling with young kids in the back seat of a car for a long road trip, and they're all getting along and they're all happy. You know you're just one tantrum for a really quick meltdown. You know it's coming, but right now it's all good. And the Lakers are beating bad teams, and LeBron's ankle is good, and AD hasn't crashed to the floor in a while, and we haven't had any situational moments where D'Angelo Russell can melt down and do dumb things. That's why Golden State got rid of him. So they do deserve credit. In fact, I got to give Darvin Ham credit. He got a roster that didn't work, and everybody knew it wouldn't work with Westbrook to start the season. And then halfway through the season at the trading deadline, they give him a new roster. And they're engaged. And they've won 9 of 11, and LeBron's happy, and Austin Reeves has a role, and they play real defense, and they're very efficient on the defensive end, and they kind of protect the rim, and it's kind of working against bad teams. But something to note. The playoffs become much more physically demanding. Stars are going to play more minutes. The bench shrinks. You're going to need more from AD, and I'm waiting for the meltdown. The kids are all getting along. It's all great. We just stopped for ice cream. But I am waiting for the tantrum and the meltdown, which would be D'Angelo Russell doing something that makes LeBron shake his head in crisis. LeBron re-aggravating his ankle, AD crashing to the floor and can't get up. Now, for the time being, though, Darvin Ham has sort of made it work. They're beating teams they should beat. He was thrown like a curveball at the trading deadline. He was given a roster to start the season as a rookie coach with a big brand that wasn't going to work. And they've moved off it, and they're headed to the play-in game. They're going to beat the T-Wolves. They're going to be a tough matchup. I don't think they're built to win 4 playoff series, but I do think a play-in game in the first series, they'd be a handful. They protect the rim. They move the ball pretty well. They get to the free throw line. They create contact. Yesterday, I watched the entire game. I was flying home from skiing. I watched the entire game, and I'm like, they're having fun. They're playing hard. They're having fun. There's a lot of teamwork going on. LeBron's totally, utterly engaged. Here's Darvin Ham after.
We're just looking forward to the opportunity, starting where we started at early in the year, now where we are, where we find ourselves sitting. We're excited. The guys are ready to go. We got great synergy in our locker room. Need to clean up some stuff defensively. But outside of that, we're ready to go.
Darvin Ham is one of the lowest profile Laker coaches ever. Tip of the cap to him, though. He's leaned into what he does, defense. He made the Westbrook thing work enough so that Westbrook viable enough to go to another team. Austin Reeves is undrafted. He's gotten AD to toughen up and play through pain. That's been the knock on AD his entire career. He won't play through pain. He's soft. He's gotten him to be a much harder player. All of it's gotten a tip of the cap and a nod from LeBron. It's kind of all working. Everybody does what they do pretty well. Now, playoff basketball is more physically demanding, and it becomes situational half-court basketball, and that's where with D'Angelo Russell, you cross your finger. There's a lot of finger crossing with the Lakers right now in terms of health and decision-making, but it's been a good 2-3 weeks, and they deserve credit for that. It's the play-in game next. I will say this. Clippers-Suns is about as good as a first-round playoff series gets. I'll take the Suns to walk through the Clippers. I also think the experienced Warriors against the inexperienced Kings is a very tasty first-round matchup. I think that probably goes 6. I would take, what dynasties get. They get the whistle. They know how to manipulate the refs. Golden State's going to get the whistle. They'll manipulate the refs. They'll win a game somewhere on the road in Sacramento. It'll be close. It may go to overtime, and they'll pull it out in 6. But I think those in the West are excellent first-round matchups. As far as the East goes, J-Mac, I kind of feel like we know who's going to be good. Nothing against the Knicks, but Julius Randle's banged up. They don't have the firepower to beat Cleveland. So I kind of feel like I know who's going to win the first-round matchups. Suns-Clippers, and I've been a Clipper fan, I think that's a bad matchup without Paul George for the Clips. Played for 11 seasons in the NBA, Cedric Ceballos is now joining us live. Bounces between LA and Phoenix. You know, the Suns are interesting. Kevin Durant is the kind of guy, because he doesn't need the ball a lot, Cedric. You can plug him into any team, and he just works. A lot of people are concerned about the Phoenix Suns' depth. You watch their games. You know them very well, their personnel. I'm not too concerned with their depth. I think they come into the playoffs rested. What are you surprised at how good they've been, how fast with KD? Let's start with that.
Well, they've been really good. I mean, Kevin is just, like you said, he's a fit and play kind of player. You put him in any scenario, and he can perform. He can come off the dribble. He can come off the screens. He can set screens. And the most important thing about Kevin Durant that people don't really give him credit for, he's a wonderful and an excellent defensive player. So he helps this team out a lot. You can see when Kevin was out, Phoenix's defense was really, really down, not having Cam or Mikal being their two defensive players that they traded away to Brooklyn. Worrying about the bench may be difficult if they get into foul trouble, so to speak. And Kevin is not a person to really get in foul trouble.
Nope.
And neither is Chris Paul. And I think that's what your concerns are. But if they stay within the course, don't get themselves in foul trouble, I don't think the bench will be that big of a factor. Cam is very dangerous as a person coming off the bench as a point guard, because his energy is there, but then sometimes he makes a lot of young mistakes or over exuberant mistakes, so to speak.
Yeah.
And with Chris Paul, you kind of get the steadiness, and he calms everybody down.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest problem is probably going to be the big fella in the middle, Ayton. Is, how will he demand the basketball? And if he's not getting the basketball, will he continue to play hard? That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, he's not a great defender. So he's always felt like he's had a little chip on his shoulder. He's not getting the ball enough. And we've talked about this. When you play with great offensive players like Golden State, Draymond Green has come to terms with what he is, and he's leaned into what he is. How hard do you think? We've been talking about this. So the Warriors go get Gary Payton again. That's going to take away minutes from maybe a Jordan Poole, who's a bad defender, whereas Peyton's a great defender, and here comes De'Aaron Fox. There's maybe a chemistry issue. Kuminga now, less minutes. Andrew Wiggins, real minutes. You tell me, you get into the playoffs, and now you start messing with the rotation. What's your feeling this morning on the Warriors going forward?
Well, I think their success is going to be going small, having Wiggins and Draymond in there. And then obviously Poole coming in and out. But I think that's what they brought Gary Payton II back for, is to defend guys like De'Aaron Fox, to defend guys maybe if they get a hold of a Chris Paul or a Devin Booker later on down the line. Yeah. And then even Murray in Detroit. That's what they brought him in for, because obviously Curry, being a little light on the defensive side, but they need him more on the offensive side than they do on the defensive side. So, yeah, I think they'll go small. They had success in winning a championship in their previous year, and I think that's what they'll do again. Just go a little bit smaller, and hopefully Wiggins will get himself in shape to help them rebound with Draymond Green.
So the Lakers are interesting. They started the year, and they asked Darvin Ham, a rookie coach, okay, work with this group. And it wasn't, and everybody knew it. And so they move off Westbrook. They move in a bunch of new parts, and suddenly they're playing well. I said, Darvin Ham's not going to win Coach of the Year, but when you consider what he started with and what he's created, Darvin's had a great year. Austin Reeves has become highly productive. Is this Laker, they've won 9 of 11. Is it fool's gold, Cedric, because they've beaten mostly bad teams? Or do you think the Lakers are a viable postseason team going forward?
Well, you got a king. I mean, you got one of the guys who's probably the best basketball player, arguably, within the top 5 on the court. And then you add a healthy Anthony Davis. You got to remember, even though Coach Ham did not have his whole roster put together as far as who's going to be where, who's going to stay and go, the injury plug Anthony Davis a little bit injured, LeBron James a little bit injured, and then Reeves comes along and just grows up in front of our eyes. I think this is such a wonderful thing. But I think the biggest thing is going to be their outside shooting. When you do clamp down on Davis and they move the ball around, do they knock down threes? Do they, pursue themselves going to the basket? LeBron is going to be LeBron, especially in the playoffs. He's going to get calls. He's going to get to the basket. He's going to be effective. But I think the biggest thing is their outside shooting. Will they be able to compete when you match 3 for 3s? And I'm not saying go out and shoot a bunch of threes like your Golden State. But if they whip that ball around and knock it down, a lot of guys going to have to stroke those threes for this team to be successful.
We're going to show you a piece of video, the T-Wolves. I'm sure you've seen it, where Rudy Gobert now, it's so we had a little bit of a scrum with the Clippers, but Gobert now is not going to travel with the team, meaning, the players probably went to Chris Finch and said, hey, man, he was way out of line here. Gobert had issues in Utah with Donovan Mitchell. Now he's got issues in Minnesota. What did you make of this situation?
It's tough because we don't know exactly what was said or what the situation was, whether it's just adjustments they're trying to make on the court, or was it something personal that these two have been brewing up for a while. You got to go back to preseason with Draymond Green and Poole going in for each other. And I think that's why their road record, the Warriors, as I'm talking about, is the way it is, because us as players, we come together on the road. And if you have some sort of beef between players, people kind of separate and choose their own little posse, so to speak, to be with each other. And I think Rudy definitely was in the wrong here, especially, they've had fights. Teammates have had fights before, but having it right there on the court live, all those cameras. Now, I think the biggest thing is going to hurt them is obviously him not traveling and not playing in the playing game. That's going to be effective for Minnesota. His defensive presence and also his the way he races to the rim is going to be very missed. And I can see if it was a series and that you stopped him for one game, but one game in the play-in is really going to hurt the Timberwolves.
Before we let you go, we've sort of ignored the East today because we kind of feel like we know who's good. Milwaukee's good, but a little old. I like Boston, but only when Robert Williams is available. Cleveland's good, but kind of young. Philadelphia, I question in close games situationally. Do you feel in the East, the teams you've watched as you've been in Phoenix or LA and they've come to town, is there a team in the East you absolutely think is a little under the radar, a little overrated? What is your strongest feeling about an Eastern team?
Yeah, under the radar, got to go with Jacques Vaughn and what he's done with the Brooklyn Nets. That trade that they made for Kyrie to Dallas is just unbelievable, and I think that's going to be a key portion to that thing. When you got Dorian Finney-Smith's defensive presence, you make the trade for Phoenix for KD, and you get Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, and these guys are defenders who's going to have to guard the Milwaukee greats and the Boston greats and the Philadelphia greats. And I think that's going to be the key. They're not guys who demand the basketball or have egos, and that could be a key for them moving up in the playoffs. They don't have a dominant superstar. And, for ratings for TV, Colin, that might be a problem, but I do see them scaring some people or surprising some teams in the East.
Good stuff. Cedric Ceballos, 11 years, an all-star and a slam dunk champ. Appreciate your insight in the playoffs, bud.
Thanks, Colin.
You bet.